and tonight we're going to read the book of Ruth, chapter 3, and hopefully also chapter 4. I'm going to start with chapter 3 of the book of Ruth, and it says, Then Naomi, her mother in law, said to her, My daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you? So, well, hopefully you were with us last week when we read the first and second chapter, and where we saw what Naomi represents, what Ruth represents, and Boaz. Here is going to get even deeper into the representation of each of them and what it will happen in the end times according to what we see in this chapter. So, Naomi, as the Ruach HaKodesh, when it comes to the spirit, the spiritual interpretation, and also when it comes to the flesh, is Israel. So, the spirit of Yahweh in the spiritual sense, the people of Yahweh in the physical sense. Ruth has to do with the end times people, in which there are some who are Gentiles but believed in Mashiach, and therefore they became part of Israel, because as we know in Colossians and Romans and other parts of scriptures, we see that in Yahushua there are no Greeks and no Yahudim, no male nor female, no slave nor master, for we are all one in him. So, then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, My daughter, shall I not seek security for you? When it says there security in the Hebrew, it means rest, find rest for you. And the actual verb is the root of the name Noach. Noah, known as Noah, was given that name because he would bring rest to the world through the ark that he would build in order to save all the animals and his family to then repopulate the world. So Noah means rest, to repose. And that is meaningful because Yahushua said that the end times, the coming of the Son of Man, would be like the days of Noah. So the days in which there will be a cleansing, this time through fire, but it will bring a new world, a new heavens, and a new earth. And the ark, this time is spiritual, is built through our belief in Mashiach Yahushua, who died on a wooden beam or cross. Basically, in scripture, it says on a tree, and that's what Noah used to make the ark. So, through our belief in Yahushua's sacrifice on a tree, we are saved. Basically, the many justified, the few completely saved, meaning not having to die, just like Noah and his family didn't have to die. So here it says Noah. In Hebrew it says Manoach. So then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, My daughter, shall I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? The verb well or good is tov, the Hebrew tov, which is also important because it has to do with the second coming. When Yahushua came during the first coming, somebody called him tov, somebody called him good, and he said that he wasn't good, not because he had done anything bad, but because he was showing that Yahweh is above everything, and therefore he's the only one that can be actually called good. Because once we enter this reality, which is lower than Yahweh's reality, then those who belong to this reality or are within this reality don't really know what good is. So people tend to call things that are not good good. So that is one interpretation. The fact that Yahweh is the only one and he remains forever good, and that's the reason why he made creation, to give everything, all of his goodness, to that which he created. And when it comes to the spiritual sense, when it comes to the first and second coming, Yahushua came to bring mercy. The last comes to bring the reward. So the goodness of Yahweh will finally manifest in the end time. So it's connected to the second coming. Therefore, when Yahushua was called good, he was basically being called by a title that represents the second coming. So when he said, "No, why do you call me good?" is as if he was saying, "Why do you call me last? I am the first." So I explained all of that because in this verse we are seeing already the connection with the end times, with the second coming, by using the verb that comes from, which is the root of the name Noah, and also using the word Tov, which is good. So then verse 2 says, "Now Boaz, whose young women you were with," this is Naomi speaking, "Now Boaz, whose young women you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is uh, now Boaz, whose young women you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is barley winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor." This is also important because it's talking about the barley, which is connected to the end times. Once again, I explained because uh, the harvest of the barley and the wheat were a few days apart, and the wheat is to make bread for those who had more money, while the barley was used by the poor. Scripture talks about this earth belonging to the poor of spirit, meaning those who continually ask for more spirit because they feel they lack. While there are a lot of people who believe they are filled, who believe and claim that they are pure or set apart and are actually far away from the Almighty. So when it comes to barley, is connected to the poor who will inherit the earth, and the threshing floor connecting also this to the harvest when the grapes will be thrown in the wine press. Also, the wheat will be gathered. So, tonight at the threshing floor, therefore, wash yourself and anoint yourself. Wash yourself and anoint yourself. So it's as the Spirit talking to the congregation of the few of the last and telling her to wash herself of her sins and anoint herself with the Spirit, with the Ruach HaKodesh, which is given through Mashiach, the Ruach HaEmet, the Spirit of truth. So, therefore, wash yourself and anoint yourself. Put on your best garment and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. So here, the wise woman who represents wisdom itself, the Ruach of Yahweh, Naomi, as her mother-in-law, is giving her tips. So she knows how a man works and how different it is to talk to a man who has eaten than talking to a man who is hungry. So she tells Ruth not to reveal herself, basically to be among the rest of the women, among the rest of the congregations, until the very end, until he was filled, or until he had fulfilled basically what he came to do. Because remember also that the doctrine is as food. So just as Joseph taught basically Joseph fed the whole world, Now a descendant of Joseph will preach and therefore feed spiritually the whole world. In this case, the fact that Boaz is about to eat and be done with eating, and then Ruth will reveal herself, represents the fact that the last, who is as Boaz, comes and fulfills his mission, and then the 144,000 will be revealed to the world, which is expecting the revelation of the chosen few, um, which we know happens a few days after the death and resurrection of the two witnesses. So, verse 3 says, "Therefore wash yourself and anoint yourself, put on your best garment, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Then it shall be, when he lies down, that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do." So she's giving her all the best advice she can give. Um, the fact that she would do that of uncovering his feet and, well, doing all this was basically a way of saying to him, please redeem me. Please, I need your redemption, your help. Uh, so that was the idea of what she was about to do, or of what she was about to do. So then it shall be, when he lies down, which represents, like I said, when the last dies, lies down, when he dies, uncover his feet. The feet represent the end times and represent the kingdom, just like the head is connected to the high priest, to the first, and therefore the first coming. The feet represent the king, the last days, the end times. That's why the statue that the king of Babylon saw in Daniel 2, his well, its feet represented the end times. So uncovering his feet would be what will happen when he dies, as it says right here, lies down. Then you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in, uncover his feet. As we know also, the doctrine, what they call the gospel, uh, the good news of the redemption, or also the good news of the kingdom, are represented by the sandals. So, uncovering his feet would be also to uncover his doctrine, uncover what he spoke before he lied down, meaning before he died, of course, the two witnesses. Boaz represents the witness like Moshe, and I continually will say two witnesses because two people will die at that event, even though here is Boaz just representing the witness like Moshe, just in case. I don't want to confuse nobody. So, then it shall be, when he lies down, that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do. There it is. He will tell you what you should do. That is the doctrine. That is a representation of the voice of Yahweh, since Yahushua is the word of Yahweh. The last is the voice. When we read in Deuteronomy 18 from verse 15, when he talks about the last, the prophet like Moshe, says, Yahweh your Elohim will raise up for you a prophet like me from your midst, from your brethren. Him you shall hear. Him you shall hear. As it says here, and he will tell you what you should do. I continue in Deuteronomy 16. According to all you desired of Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yahweh my Elohim, nor let me see this great fire anymore, lest I die. The last, the second coming, is the voice, is the fire, the consuming fire. That's why it's bringing judgment. Like in the days of Noah, he brought water. Now the last, as in the days of Noah, will bring judgment, but through fire. Yahushua was the water, but water of life. So, and Yahweh said to me, What they have spoken is good. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren, and I will put my words in his mouth. Basically, I will put the spirit of Mashiach in him, because Mashiach is the word, the last is the voice. And I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And it shall be that whoever will not hear my words which he speaks in my name, I will require it of him. So, and it shall be that whoever will not hear my words which he speaks in my name, as it says also here, in his mouth he shall speak to them all that I command him. We see here how Naomi is telling Ruth, and he will tell you what you should do. In the physical or historical interpretation, of course, is talking about Boaz would understand what Ruth was doing, what she was asking for, so he would either say yes or no, and he would, if it was a yes, tell her how to go um, and do what she wanted, or how they would come to fulfill that. So it says, verse 5, and she said to her, all that you say to me, I will do. As we just saw, Naomi represents the Spirit telling Ruth to listen to Boaz. So is the Spirit telling the congregation to listen to the last, to the second coming, to the witness like Moshe, as we just saw in Deuteronomy 18. So verse 6 says, so she went down to the threshing floor and did according to all that her mother-in-law instructed her. And after Boaz had eaten and drunk, and his heart was cheerful, so now he was happy because he had he had finished eating. Then it says, and his heart was cheerful, as when the last will die, and therefore be cheerful that he already fulfilled everything and went through the pain that he had to go through. So his heart was cheerful. He went to lie down at the end of the heap of grain, at the end of the heap of grain, once again representing the end of times by very close to the actual harvest. And she came softly, uncovered his feet, and lay down. And that is verse 7. Here it says that he lied down, bikse, which would mean at the end. In Hebrew, ketz is en, and is found here in this word. So once again, representing the fact that he dies at the end of times, lies down at the end of times, and he is happy that finally finished, and the harvest will happen right afterwards. So verse 8 says, now it happened at midnight that the man was startled at midnight, right at the half of the end times, when he dies, and turned himself, and there a woman was lying at his feet. And he said, who are you? Who are you? So, just a second. Oh, yeah, it's not done yet, the verse. Because this is very interesting. When she. Just a second. Yeah, Miet, who are you? And she said, I am Ruth, your servant. All right. At the end, I'm going to read the whole verse in English, and then I'm going to say something regarding the Hebrew. It says, now it happened at midnight, once again I repeat, as in the end times, at the half of those 7 years, because the two witnesses died at the end of the first 3 years and a half of those 7 years. So at the what would represent midnight. Now it happened at midnight that the man was startled and turned himself, and there a woman was lying at his feet. And he said, who are you? Who are you? Me et. That is interesting because me means who in Hebrew, and when it comes to that word throughout scriptures, when Yahweh makes a question saying me, in 90% of times, it represents Messiah, as in he who is like him. So also Messiah, who shows us who the Father is. So that's why the who is related to Mashiach. So when in Hebrew appears the word me, is connected to Mashiach. The word ma, which means what, is connected to the second coming, who gives understanding of who uh, is Yahweh through Mashiach, who is the who. So in this case, me et, the word et is not translated to any other language. It's just a word that only has meaning in Hebrew, and it is, interestingly enough, the is composed by the first and last letters of the Aleph Tab, or the Aleph Bet, the Hebrew alphabet. So this question is basically me et saying who is like the first and the last. Who is the first and the last? This this question could be translated as that. Right here is being said as me at, asking who she was, because of, in this case, um, yeah, et, like I said, that's a word that is not translated to any other language. When it comes to this, it's saying at because it's referring to the female root. So it's not exactly the same word. That's why it's being translated as you, as who are you. So me at can be translated as who are you, but it could be translated as me et, which would be who is the first and last. So, and he said, who is the first and last, could be translated also as Boaz, the last, said that Mashiach, Yahushua, is first and last. I hope that's being understood, because I do think it's very interesting. I repeat, when it comes to root, when it comes to the historical sense, Boaz is simply asking, who are you? But the way that is written in Hebrew could also be pronounced me et instead of me at. Who are you? A female? Me at. But me et would be who is the first and last. And that is Boaz speaking, who represents the second coming. But as we know, the second coming has to give testimony of the first. So, in this case, it would be Boaz as the last given testimony of Mashiach Yahushua being Messiah. In this question, he's basically saying what the testimony for justification is: the fact that Mashiach Yahushua is first and last. And that is interesting because verses before this, Naomi, as the Spirit told Ruth, do or follow everything that he says to you. And the first thing that he said was, me et Yahushua is first and last. I hope that's clear. In the historical sense, it's simple. It's saying, who are you? That's all. Then the second half of that verse says, so she answered, I am Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative. That's how they translate it. Take your maidservant under your wing. Here, actually, it had to do with the mantle, the Yahudim wore, that represents the spirit over us. And this is also mentioned in Malachi in a way as a prophecy for Mashiach. When Mashiach was on earth, there was a woman who had been for 12 years sick, and she came and, having faith, touched one of the corners of his mantle, and her sickness went away because of her faith, fulfilling what was written in Malachi. Here, where it says, spread your wing over me, basically, it could be better translated as, spread the corner of your garment over your maidservant. That meant, yeah, also put me under your wing, as one would say nowadays. also basically was telling her to redeem her, to make her his wife, which is very interesting. And this is actually very important. If we go to Jeremiah, a very important, well, chapter. Just like Yahweh prophesied in Isaiah that he would make a new thing, he would create a new thing in the world, because it is written that there's not anything new under the sun. Everything that was will be, and everything that is was. But Yahweh said that he would do a new thing in the world 4 times in scriptures. Two of those times, actually I could say three, represent the first and second coming. The coming of the first Yahushua HaMashiach through a virgin. That would be a first and an only uh, happening in history. A virgin giving birth, that is something new that Yahweh prophesied hundreds of years before it happened through Isaiah. Also in Isaiah, Yahweh prophesied the second coming, but in that case, it wouldn't be through a virgin. So that is in Isaiah 9. But that birth is also prophesied in Micah, or the prophet Micah, and also is prophesied here in Jeremiah 31. As I have said in many of the studies that you have heard, the first coming genetically would appear through the tribe of Yahudah, according to Genesis 49 and the rest of scriptures. But in Genesis 49, I think is very clear. Then the second coming would be through the tribe of Joseph, same, Genesis 49, very clear about that. So Joseph is related to the second coming. And when it comes to that last, would be through Ephraim, because Joseph had two sons who became tribes also, Ephraim and Menashe. From Ephraim, the last would come, and also from Nun, just in case. So there are three men that are shown in scriptures are as being ancestors of the last, and those are um, Yosef, Ephraim, and Nun, which is represented by Joshua or Yahushua ben Nun as the one who took the place of Moshe to enter the land. So, going back to this point, I wanted to say all of that because the chapter is very important. Chapter 39 of Jeremiah talks about the remnant, the chosen few. And in verse 6 says, "For there shall be a day when the watchman will cry on Mount Ephraim, Arise and let us go up to Zion, to Yahweh our Elohim." So that is key because it starts talking about Ephraim and Zion, the chosen few. Then it goes on verse 7, it says, "O Yahweh, save your people, the remnant of Israel." We keep going. And in verse 9, it says, "They shall come with weeping." That is the second Exodus. People will go away from their homes, as Yahushua said it in Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 17. And as Lot, when he had to go out of his house and leave everything behind, and his wife, who wanted to look back, became salt. That's why Mashiach said, remember Lot's wife, when he said that the coming of the Son of Man would be like the days of Lot. So, they shall come with weeping, and with supplications I will lead them through the second coming, through the good shepherd. I will cause them to walk by rivers of waters. That is through the preaching of Mashiach, who is the river of water of life, in a straight way in which they shall not stumble. That is Mashiach, Yahushua. That is the way to Yahweh. For I am a father to Israel. The first time as the way he came as the son. This time he's coming as the father. That's why he says this right here. For I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn. This is amazing, and this is key. Because the fact that he's saying, for I am a father to Israel, and Ephraim is my firstborn, Yahweh is putting himself in Joseph's shoes. because he's saying that Ephraim is his firstborn, and that was Joseph's firstborn. So Yahweh is saying that the time that he comes through the genes of Joseph, he would come as the father, not as the son. And when he came as the father, he would become the firstborn of Yahweh, because Yahushua is the only begotten son. But when he appears twice, now there are two. Therefore, he has to become firstborn by being one with him, firstborn of the 144,000. So, first time he came as the only begotten son, that's why he's represented by Yitzhak. The second time he comes as the firstborn, that's why he's represented by Jacob, who came as second but got the firstborn place from Esau. Just like Ephraim came second but got the firstborn place that Menashe held before. So the fact that Yahweh is saying, "For I am a father to Israel," as in I will come as a father to the 144,000, and Ephraim is my firstborn, Yahweh is saying that he would come the last time through Ephraim to become the firstborn, while Yahushua became the only begotten son. Through him, the last can become what we see here. But verse 15, thus says Yahweh, a voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation and bitter weeping. Rachel or Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted for her children because they are no more. This was fulfilled in the physical sense when Herod sent to kill all the children from Bethlehem from 2 years down. So this was being a prophecy that children of Rachel, because Bethlehem was a part of the land that belonged to the children of Rachel, of Rachel, she was being used here as the representation of the Spirit weeping for all the children that would die when Herod was trying to kill Mashiach. But not only that, it's also prophesying of what would happen until Joseph would appear in the end times, who is the son of Rachel. So after that, I'm about to get to the verse. In verse 20 it says, "Is Ephraim my dear son? Is he a pleasant child? For though I spoke against him, I earnestly remember him still." I spoke against him because just like the prodigal son, the last falls in the apostasy. He's born in the apostasy. So that's why Yahweh had to speak against. But then through Mashiach gives him mercy. So shows his love for him and makes him firstborn. So I earnestly remember him still. Therefore my heart yearns for him. I will surely have mercy on him, says Yahweh. This is talking about the last as the prodigal son, and it's also talking obviously about all the descendants of Ephraim who were spread throughout all the world, who are most of them part of the many, of what I call the many all the time, which will have to go through death in order to enter the kingdom justified. That's why Yahweh is saying, although I spoke against them, still I will have mercy, meaning I will resurrect and give life eternal. So after that, and I'm about to get to the point, verse 22. This verse is very, I guess one would say, mysterious, and several translations give very different ways to say it. Yeah, verse 22, it says, the way I have it here, I'm gonna see if this interpretation is better. Yahweh Elohim of Israel says, when I bring them back, oh no, that's another one. 22, how long will you vacillate, O wayward daughter? Right there is talking about the apostasy, the many who are going in the way of the spirit of error. So how long will you vacillate, O wayward daughter? For Yahweh will cause something new and different to happen. This translation says, Israel will search for Elohim. That is an interpretation, and actually I kind of like it, because that is the point, and it's getting to the point. Here, there's a comment in this translation. It says Israel will search for Elohim. Literally, a woman shall court a suitor, or a woman shall encompass a man. A woman will go around a man. A woman will ask for a man instead of what normally happens. The man goes and asks for the hand of the woman. That is the the rule. What normally happens is that a man will ask the woman to marry him, or back in the day, either the woman or the dad of that woman. But the man would have to make the first movement, would have to make the approach. So Yahweh in this other translation says, "For Yahweh has created a new thing in the earth." So like I was saying, Yahweh said that he would do four new things throughout history, and two, almost three of them have to do with the coming of the first and the last. One of them is the fact that he would be born of a virgin. That was a new thing. Now, when it comes to the second coming, the word that has to do with woman here doesn't mean a virgin. In this case, is just a woman. So it can be obviously not a virgin. Actually, there is a translation that says a woman who is not a virgin will encompass a man. And as we are seeing in Ruth, instead of Boaz going to Naomi or going to Ruth and asking them if he could have the hand of Ruth in marriage, we see that Ruth went to Boaz and asked him in marriage, like for his hand in marriage, basically. So Yahweh did a new thing in that moment to represent what he will do in the end times. Not that there will be a woman that will come and ask the last to marry her, but the fact that the congregation, like Israel, as one of the translations said it, will search for Yahweh instead of Yahweh searching for Israel as he has always done, looking for Israel, looking for the woman, asking her to marry him, asking her to be faithful, asking her to fulfill his commandments, etc. No longer will that happen. He will make a new thing. He will create in his people, in his congregation, a desire to go search for the Creator. So that is a new thing that would happen in the end times, represented by the fact that Ruth is going to Boaz to ask him to marry her. That is a new thing, which represents that finally the congregation will look for the true doctrine instead of the true doctrine having to go to everybody as Yahweh has done through the ages with the scriptures, the prophets, and everything else. I was in verse, let me see, I guess 8. Now it happened at midnight that the man was startled and turned himself. Yeah, that the man was startled, and a woman was lying at his feet, and he said, "Who are you?" So she answered, "I am Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative." So, as I was saying, there are two comments right there. One has to do with the fact that it literally says, "Spread the corner of your garment over your maidservant." So, cover me with your spirit. The congregation asking the witness like Moshe, to cover her, the congregation, with the Ruach HaKodesh, with the same um, ointment, basically, that Yahweh has given the last, with the same unction, basically. So, spread the corner of your garment over your maidservant. And then, when it says that you are a relative, in Hebrew doesn't say you are a relative. It says because you are a redeemer. Because you are a redeemer. That is amazing. It doesn't call him relative. It calls him you are a redeemer. It is a big issue, at least for me, that when they translate it, they don't do it in a literal sense, because one could lose this very important point. Ruth is calling Boaz a redeemer. And as we read in the other chapters, there were more than one. And as we will see in the future right now, there were two. So at the end, not three, not four, but not one. Two redeemers throughout the book of Ruth. One of those two redeemers happens to be Boaz, as Ruth is saying it right here. She is literally saying, "You are a redeemer." Ki goel ata. Ki goel ata. Because a redeemer you are. So, it represents the second coming, the first and last. Two redeemers. Yahweh coming to the world to redeem the few and the many. Two redemptions. That's why from his side came out blood and water for the two redemptions. So, after that, because you are a redeemer, that's verse 9. Continue with verse 10. Then he said, "Blessed are you of Yahweh, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning, in that you did not go after young men, whether poor or rich." So he's seeing the the kind of woman that Ruth is, what she finds important, not riches, not youth, but basically redemption, as in the spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of truth, wisdom, as in what Boaz would have right here. So, and I continue going to the Hebrew because there are many things that we can find there in order to understand even better or in a deeper way what is being said here. It is interesting that Boaz calls Ruth BT, or my daughter, because he's about to marry her, but he's calling her daughter. And obviously, there are a lot of evil, sick people that would uh, interpret that in a very bad way. But the fact here is that Boaz represents the first and last. And like I already said, using other chapters of scriptures, when Yahweh comes as the last, he comes as the father to get the bride for the son. But he himself is both the father and son, the last and first. So when he came as the first, he came as the son. As the last, he comes as the father. So that's why he says, my daughter, because he's talking to the congregation as the last. But when he marries her, he's basically becoming the first. As I have explained, the first and last become one after everything happens, as it is prophesied throughout the entire scriptures, but also in Ezekiel 37, which is key. So Boaz calls her daughter, and then it says again, then he said, "Blessed are you of Yahweh, my daughter, for you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning." That is showing what Yahweh will do at the end. Yahweh will show more of his power and of his goodness at the end of times than at the at the beginning when Adam was created, and also at the beginning of the spiritual life, which was when Mashiach, Yahushua, came 2,000 years ago. So what we are about to see in these end times and afterwards, of course, cannot be compared to that which the disciples saw, or what Moshe and Israel saw, or what Isaac, Jacob, Abraham, etc. So also it has to do with what I was saying regarding Jeremiah 31 about Israel now going to look for Yahweh instead of going away from Yahweh as it has been doing for the last 6,000 years. So that's why Boaz, as Yahweh being the last, says, "For you have shown more kindness at the end than at the beginning." And it is interesting that in Hebrew, the words that it uses is ha'acharon, mean harishon, which could be said also as, because you have shown more kindness to the last than to the first. So that would have that has to do with the fact that there will be more people accepting the doctrine of the last than there were accepting the doctrine of the first. That's why there will be 144,000 this time, while the last time there were only 12 people. This time there will be 12,000 per each disciple. So the favor, or Hazdecha, your favor, I mean, talking to Ruth, will be greater when it comes to the last than to the first. And then I continue, in that you did not go after young men, whether poor or rich. As I have explained, the last will be older than the first when he dies. That's why he represents the father and other things. As he's saying here, because you did not go after a young man. So Boaz represents an older man. Whether poor or rich, we know that Boaz was rich. However, that was not the point, and he understood. So that's why he says it this way. And I say rich in the sense that we started reading, one of the translations said he was a man of wealth. So now the fact that he says this here is because it represents the fact that his wealth regarding the last would be of knowledge, understanding. And the congregation is not looking for uh, gold and silver as the false congregation is through the prosperity movement. The true congregation is looking for the truth. So no matter the appearances, when they hear the truth, they will follow, because the real sheep follow the good shepherd through his voice, not through his looks. So, and now, my daughter, do not fear. Do not fear. This is key, because the chosen few, before they become the chosen few, as the rest of the world, will be in fear of what will happen at the end. But when the last appears, he basically tells the chosen few not to fear, because they won't have to die through the great tribulation. And even being in the tribulation, they won't have to um, die or suffer like the rest of people. So, and now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request. I will do for you all that you request. So he's saying yes to the marriage proposal, and he's saying also that he is the fulfillment of the prayers of the people. So through Yahushua, who is the Amen, the certainly to all prayers, it will be fulfilled through the last. So basically, through Yahushua, we get the yes, and through the last is done. So that's why Boaz, as the last, says, I will do for you all that you request, for all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman, representing, of course, the true congregation, the congregation of Philadelphia, as we see in Revelation 3. You are a virtuous woman. Chail, at. Uh, Eshet, Chail, at. Woman of, as it says here, virtue. A prudent woman, a wise woman. So, I'm going to continue. Verse 12. Now, it is true that I am a close relative. In Hebrew says, and now, because it is the truth. Just a second. Something in the Hebrew, they put some signs to show that there is something hidden here, because it is written one way and pronounced another. But yeah, basically, it's when it comes to the word im, which could be translated as aim, which is mother, or im, which is if. And I'm sure there's many other things that we could see here or find here. For one, also the word is aleph mem. Aleph mem. Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet, or the aleph taf. Some people call it aleph bet, as in alphabet, and others as aleph taf, because it's the first and last letter. So, one word that we can see there is aim, which is mother, as in the Ruach HaKodesh, the spirit of truth that Yahushua gave us. Also, the if is here as in saying, it's true that I am a redeemer if the other one doesn't want to come up and redeem you. And the other basically is letter by letter, which we have the Aleph and the Mem, meaning the first Mashiach, the first Mem. So here we are seeing in a way that Yahweh is showing us that when Boaz was talking to Ruth and he was telling her that indeed he was a redeemer, he was at the same time telling her that he was not the first redeemer. There was one that came before, and that is Mashiach, the first, as represented by the word im or Aleph Mem. So it says, I am a redeemer, but also there is a redeemer closer than me. I was translating literally. I'm going to see how it says in the King James. Now it is true that I am a close relative. However, there is a relative closer than I. Yeah. So closer than I. There is a relative or a redeemer closer than I. And like I said, that was represented by that word, meaning he means Yahushua. So this is key to start understanding the whole book, even though I have said many things already. Now we're going to start seeing all the confirmations regarding the representation of each person. She comes to him, to Boaz, and tells him to please redeem her. However, he says, yes, I am willing. However, there is another person that is closer than I to redeem you. As in, when it comes to time, whoever comes first is closer in time than whoever comes later on. So, even though that's obvious, that is to explain that Yahushua, when this was written, Yahushua HaMashiach was closer than the second coming, than the last. So it's as if Boaz was talking to the congregation and saying, yes, I can redeem you at the end of times, but there is one that would have to come before. If he wants to redeem you, let him do it. As we know, when Yahushua came and a Gentile woman, asked him for a miracle, he said that he came for the lost tribes of Israel, and that, in other words, later would come for the Gentiles. Even though once he died, he opened the door for the Gentiles, before he died, he only came for Israel, because that's what the first time represents. Yahushua saved Israel. Now the last comes to open a gate, or to also gather Gentiles who believe in Mashiach, as Boaz is gathering Ruth, who is a Gentile, but believes in the Elohim of Israel. So, the fact that Boaz is saying, yes, I am a redeemer, is as the last saying, yes, I am the second coming or the second manifestation. However, there is one who was first. Therefore, we need to go through him. We need to ask him. We need to get his permission, his blessing, as we need the blood of Mashiach to cleanse us from all our sins, his blessing, his intercession, his sacrifice, etc. So that is key. And I repeat, verse 11, and now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do for you all that you request, for all the people of my town know that you are a virtuous woman. Now it is true that I am a close redeemer. However, there is a closer redeemer than I. That represents Mashiach, Yahushua, the first. Verse 13 says, stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that if he will perform the duty of a close relative for you. Let me go and see that in Hebrew. So, in the morning, if he will redeem you, good, that he redeems you, or let him redeem you. But if he won't desire to redeem you, then I will redeem you myself, as Yahweh lives. So this is key. Boaz is telling Ruth, there is one that is closer. I will ask him, as in, I will pray before him and ask him for you as my bride, unless he wants you for him. So I will talk to him and tell him that he's closer, that he has a the right to do it before Boaz acting. So in this case, I read it from English. It says, stay this night, and in the morning it shall be that if he will perform the duty of a redeemer for you, good, let him redeem you. But if he does not want to redeem you, then I will redeem you. As Yahweh lives, lie down until the morning. Lie down until the morning. Once again, this is interesting. I already said that the last, when he lied down, represented that he died, and then he would resurrect to harvest the chosen few and the many. The many who are part of the Gentiles, or part of the Gentiles are part of the many, they will have to die. Therefore, they have to lie down until the last appears before the first and asks him what to do regarding the many, those who lie down as root. So, but if he does not want to perform the duty for you, then I will perform the duty for you, as Yahweh lives, lie down until morning, as in the morning of the day of Yahweh, the millennium of Mashiach ruling over earth. And then it says, verse 14, so she lay at his feet until morning. So she remained in that same place at his feet, seeing him as the king, as the Melech Gadol, the second coming, the end times, all that feet represent. Like the Jewish people, when they talk about Mashiach, they say that they can hear the steps of Mashiach. The steps of Mashiach represent the end times. The feet making a sound. So it says, so she lay at his feet until morning, and she arose before one could recognize another. She arose before one could recognize another. So she arose, just like the many will resurrect before the very end, because they will be invited to the wedding of the Lamb. So it says she arose before one could recognize another. Then he said, do not let it be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Also he said, bring the shawl that is on you and hold it. Here, regarding this verse, has a comment. It says that in Hebrew says many. Or, oh no, the cloak. And then it says many, but that's regarding another word. Bring the cloak that is on you and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 ephahs of barley and laid it on her. Then she went into the city. Here, when it says that basically gave her 6 measures after she rose up before anybody could recognize one another, represents the fact that the many will resurrect at the very, very beginning of that millennium, before anybody can recognize each other in the judgment day, which is the sixth, the year 6000, meaning the seventh millennium, because from the 6000 to the 6999 will be that millennium, and then comes eternity. So we are about to enter the year 6000. Yahushua came in the year 4000, 2000 years ago. Uh, and then, I repeat, there will be 1000 years. The many will resurrect to be invited to the wedding. That's why they arise, just like it says here, that she arose before one could recognize another. Then he said, do not let it be known that the woman came to the threshing floor. Also, he said, bring the cloak that is on you and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley. Six, as in the end of the sixth day, which to Yahweh are as 1,000 years. So this representing the fact of the harvest at the end of the 6,000 years. Then she went into the city, and we know the city, the New Jerusalem, is the city of Yahweh, which will come down from heaven, and that will be the bride of the last. Even though the first and the last become one, they will still, how can I say, they will still keep or remain as Melech and Koel, Kohen Gadol, meaning even though there will be one, just like one can say that Yahushua is the door and the good shepherd, two things regarding one person, that is because that one spirit would appear twice. So in that time, they will be one, yet that separation will remain for understanding of several things. So in this case, Yahushua marries the chosen few. The last marries the New Jerusalem, which is basically a spirit that comes down from heaven. And obviously, also, it will be something physical that Yahweh will create in the second heaven in order to bring it down to this reality. So, she went into the city. Verse 16, when she came to her mother in law, she said, is that you, my daughter? When she came to her mother in law, she said, is that you, my daughter? They also translate it as, how are you, my daughter? Verse 16. And then, actually, would be, who are you? Once again. Now that she told Boaz to marry her, and he said yes, interesting that we see here certain words that could be interpreted as Naomi calling Ruth the first and last, meaning she's one, or she will become one with Mashiach as the wife of Boaz. So, verse 16, when she came to her mother-in-law, she said, is that you, my daughter? Then she told her all that the man had done for her. Then she told her all that the man had done for her. And she said, these 6 measures of barley he gave me. For he said to me, do not go empty-handed to your mother-in-law. That was him providing already the food for both the many and the few, providing the doctrine for both during the end times of the harvest. For those who were poor, he gave all the barley that they could have and need and more. Do not go empty-handed to your mother-in-law. Then she said, sit still, my daughter. Sit still, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out. For the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day. When it comes to what I was saying, this day meaning the day of Yahweh, the 7th millennium. For the man will not rest until he has concluded the matter this day. In Hebrew, matter is the word dabar, the word, as in meaning the last will not rest, as it is also prophesied, until he fulfills the word of Yahweh sent to him through Mashiach Yahushua. And to see, well, when it says, my daughter, until you know how the matter will turn out, the word until which is ad, until, could also be pronounced ed, which is witness. So one finds the word witness next to the fact that Boaz has to become the redeemer. So once again, pointing to Boaz being one of the two witnesses of Revelation 11. And that's how this chapter ends.